picture the scene, right? It is evening. The apartment lights are, turned down low. And there is this tiny dog just curled up on the arm of the couch.
Oh, I can already picture exactly where this is going.
Yeah, we were talking maybe, 5 or 6 pounds max, just buried under a coat. So incredibly dense, it practically doubles the animal's physical footprint.
Right, just a little fluff ball.
Exactly. And it looks completely serene. But the absolute millisecond a shoe scuffs the floorboards in the hallway outside, this creature just erupts.
Oh, yeah, 0 to 60.
It is up, spinning and barking with this chest-deep intensity, acting as though the entire building is under some kind of full-scale siege.
Yeah, it's a full tactical alert.
Right. And then, 30 seconds later, it goes right back to sleep, tucked against its owner's leg, like absolutely nothing happened.
Anyone who has ever been in a room with this particular animal knows exactly the whiplash you were describing.
It's so jarring.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because your brain looks at that fluffy packaging and instantly categorizes it, right? You think, okay, toy, lap dog, maybe a fashion accessory.
Totally.
But the behavioral software running inside that tiny frame, it just does not match the exterior hardware at all.
And that exact mismatch, going from a plush toy to a highly reactive sentinel in 3 seconds flat, that is exactly what we are decoding today.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is, because once you understand the actual mechanics operating beneath that 5-pound exterior, it fundamentally changes how you perceive them.
Absolutely.
So we've been looking at some amazing research compiled by the Pomeranian Health Academy, and the overarching theme we found is that, you have to strip away the modern designer tote bag context entirely.
Yeah, to understand the lap dog, you first have to understand the sled dog.
Wait, sled dog?
Yeah, you have to zoom out from the Pomeranian as an isolated modern breed and look at the broader ancestral family it belongs to, which is the spitz-type. These are dogs that originated in incredibly unforgiving, just brutal environments. We were looking at the harsh climates of Scandinavia, the Arctic regions, and, the Siberian tundra.
Okay, let's unpack this, because an environment that brutal, it forces highly specific evolutionary adaptations.
Right, there's no room for error.
Yeah, it's not about aesthetics at that point. It's about pure thermodynamics and just basic survival. So the physical traits we look at today and call, cute, they are actually ancient pieces of survival architecture.
Every single one of them. Take that incredibly dense double coat, for example.
Right.
The Pomeranian has a soft, thick undercoat. And that is designed to trap a layer of dead air right against the skin, providing critical thermal insulation.
So it's basically a built-in winter coat.
Exactly. And then the harsher outer guard hairs exist to literally repel ice and snow.
Wow.
And the curled tail, which, looks like a decorative plume today, that served a vital purpose.
What did it do?
Well, when the dog curled up in the snow to sleep, that heavily furred tail acted as a built-in scarf. They would cover their nose and face to warm the freezing air before it hit their lungs.
That is wild. And their faces are just as specialized, right? Because they have that very distinct sort of wedge-shaped head with the pricked-up ears.
Yeah, giving them that constant fox-like expression.
Right, exactly.
Those upright ears, they act as acoustic funnels. Think about it. In a vast, silent, snow-covered landscape, a dog needs to catch the faintest sound of an approaching predator, or even a shift in the ice.
So they're literally satellite dishes.
Basically, yeah. The alert expression is just the physical manifestation of an animal built for intense vigilance. Because the ancestors of the Pomeranian were significantly larger, heavy-duty working dogs.
Right.
They pulled sleds, they herded reindeer, and they served as the primary alarm system for isolated human encampments.
So you're telling me this purse dog is essentially a miniaturized dire wolf?
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
It's like taking the aggressive, heavy-duty software of a snowplow and installing it into a remote control car.
What's fascinating here is that analogy captures the psychological reality perfectly.
Does it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We often make the mistake of separating physical anatomy from behavioral wiring, but they evolve together.
Right. You can't have one without the other.
Exactly. The need to be psychologically switched on at all times is a deeply entrenched survival mechanism. In an Arctic camp, a dog that sleeps deeply through the day and just ignores strange noises, that is a dog that gets itself and its human companions killed.
Wow. So the vigilance was absolutely non-negotiable.
It was life or death.
So we have this baseline template, right? A large, metabolically expensive, highly reactive northern working dog. But there is a massive evolutionary gap between a 40-pound sled dog surviving on the tundra and a 5-pound dog demanding a piece of cheese in a modern kitchen.
A huge gap.
Right. So how does that drastic physiological shift actually happen?
Well, it comes down to geography and changing human utility. The transitional phase for this animal occurred in a historical region called Pomerania.
Hence the name.
Exactly, which sat along the Baltic coast, covering parts of what is now northern Germany and Poland. So as these larger Spitz dogs moved south into these trading hubs, their roles began to shift.
Because as society modernized, human needs changed, right? People weren't relying on dog teams for survival as much.
Right, they wanted companions.
Yeah, they wanted animals that could live comfortably indoors, travel easily, and I guess serve as markers of social status.
Okay.
So breeders in this region began intentionally selecting the smallest dogs from the litters, just breeding them down generation by generation.
Yeah, and this is where we see human intentionality completely override natural selection.
Wow.
Breeders were utilizing a pretty crude form of genetic manipulation. They were hyper-focused on reducing the physical size while desperately trying to retain the visual hallmarks of the Spitz.
Like the bold carriage and the thick coat.
Right, and that super alert expression.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, though. If breeders spent decades, or even centuries, intentionally shrinking the skeletal structure to fit into high society, why keep the heavy-duty alarm system?
That is the big question.
Right. I mean, if the ultimate goal is a refined companion for a Victorian parlor, why not just breed out the snowplow software?
Well, breeding, especially historically, it operates on a layering effect.
The layering effect. Okay.
Yeah, so you can radically alter the physical dimensions of an animal long before you degrade its deeply wired neurological instinct.
Oh, I see.
So the structural reduction was layered over a foundation of Arctic survival instincts. Nobody went into the genetic code and, deleted the line that tells the dog to guard the perimeter.
So the hardware shrank, but the operating system remained fully intact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then came the final layer of refinement, which was really catalyzed by Queen Victoria in the late 19th century.
Queen Victoria.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Her influence over this breed cannot be overstated. During a trip to Florence, she fell in love with a small Pomeranian named Marco.
Marco.
Yeah, Marco. And she brought him back to England, establishing her own breeding kennel. Because she was the cultural epicenter of her era, the breed instantly became the ultimate status symbol.
So she was essentially a 19th century influencer.
Basically, yeah.
Just supercharging the miniaturization process. And this perfectly coincides with the rise of organized dog shows, right?
Yeah.
Which meant breeders were now selecting for hyper-exaggerated traits.
Right. An even smaller frame, an even more dramatic coat, and a very specific, proud presentation.
All of which culminated in a dog that is, honestly, completely unaware of its own physical limitations.
Oh, totally unaware. Nothing in the Pomeranian's long ancestry ever taught it to think small.
Right.
Its internal blueprint is constructed entirely around confidence, territory awareness, and vocalization.
Which is why you will see a 5-pound Pomeranian walk into a dog park and just lock eyes with a Great Dane without a second thought.
Exactly. Psychologically, it still remembers being the biggest, toughest animal in the snowbank.
That is hilarious. But also, that retained full-size internal script completely recontextualizes the day-to-day reality of living with them.
It really does.
Because once you view their actions through the lens of evolutionary mechanics, what looks like a bad habit suddenly makes perfect sense. Like, let's look at the barking.
Yes, let's talk about the barking.
If you own a Pomeranian, you know they are incredibly vocal.
Right, because they're data-gathering machines. They are constantly reporting back to the pack.
So it's not just them being annoying.
No, not at all. The biggest disservice an owner can do is treat the barking purely as a behavioral defect, as if the dog is malfunctioning or being willfully disobedient.
Right, because it's not a malfunction. It is the original job description executing flawlessly.
Flawlessly.
The dog hears an unfamiliar acoustic signature, like the UPS driver or a distant siren or just a neighbor's door closing, and its nervous system just spikes with a surge of adrenaline.
The dog is simply announcing a change in the environment. But obviously, this presents a critical challenge for a modern owner living in, say, a high-density apartment.
Right, because your neighbors don't care about the dog's Arctic ancestry.
Exactly. And you are never going to train away an instinct forged over thousands of years of freezing nights.
Right.
So the goal of training isn't to eliminate the alert. The goal is to manage the neurological recovery.
Okay, so what does this all mean in a practical sense? For you listening, how do you actually manage a biological alarm system in a modern living room?
This raises an important point. You basically have to complete the circuit for them.
Complete the circuit.
Yeah. The healthy behavioral cycle is alert, acknowledge, settle, and reconnect.
Okay.
So the dog hears a noise and barks. The owner must step in and acknowledge the data, essentially telling the dog, I hear the threat, I have assessed it, and I am taking over.
Got it.
Because once the dog realizes the leadership has secured the camp, it can settle and bring its cortisol levels back down to baseline.
Ah, so the failure point isn't the initial bark.
Right.
The failure point is the spiral. Like when the dog barks and the owner ignores it or just yells, shut up, from the other room, the dog gets no confirmation that the environment is actually secure.
Exactly. So it just spirals into a frenzy, keeping itself in a state of high physiological stress.
Wow.
And that spiral is a symptom of a massive leadership vacuum, which honestly is a widespread issue with toy breeds in general.
Because they're small.
Yeah, because the dog is undeniably cute and physically incapable of pulling an owner over on a leash or knocking them down. People just assume obedience training is optional.
They treat the animal like an accessory.
Right, rather than a highly intelligent working breed descendant.
Which is actually a deeply unfair position to put the dog in, if you think about it.
Yeah.
If you don't step up to enforce boundaries and provide structure, the ancient Spitz brain looks around and decides, well, someone has to secure this perimeter, and since you aren't doing it, I guess the burden falls on me.
That is exactly what happens. And leaving a dog with that level of unchecked responsibility creates immense anxiety.
You bet.
A small dog, forced to act as the pack leader, will become demanding, highly reactive toward strangers, and intensely possessive of its owner's attention.
So it's basically small dog syndrome.
Right. Confidence without structural guidance manifests as sheer bossiness. But when you provide that guidance, channeling their intelligence into training and clear boundaries, that same confidence becomes a tremendous asset. It results in a brilliant, engaged companion.
So this massive psychological drive trapped inside a tiny, structurally compromised frame, I mean, it brings up a critical physical mismatch.
Oh, definitely.
It sounds like owning one of these dogs is analogous to owning a vintage sports car.
I love that analogy.
Right, because it looks absolutely stunning parked in the driveway, but you have to understand the specific engineering, you have to perform rigorous maintenance, and you absolutely do not let a toddler play with the steering wheel.
Perfect analogy, because the physical maintenance required is intensive, entirely debunking the myth of the, low-maintenance stuffed animal.
Right.
Let's revisit the thermodynamics of that double coat for a second.
Okay, yeah.
When you take an insulating system built for sub-zero temperatures and place it in a climate-controlled 72-degree living room, the dense undercoat sheds constantly.
Obviously.
And if it isn't actively managed, that dead hair doesn't just fall out onto the floor. It impacts against the skin.
Oh, so it creates mats.
Yes. And matting isn't just a cosmetic issue where the dog looks a little unkempt.
Right.
These are tight, interwoven tangles of hair that pull relentlessly on the dog's skin with every single movement.
How?
Yeah. It restricts airflow, it traps moisture, and it causes severe physical pain. Failing to brush a Pomeranian down to the skin on a routine basis isn't just lazy. It is a structural failure of care.
Wow. And the structural vulnerabilities, they extend far beyond just the coat, don't they?
Oh, significantly.
Yeah.
We really have to look at the biomechanics of their skeleton.
Okay.
Because when human selective breeding drastically outpaces the slow timeline of natural evolution, you create anatomical bottlenecks.
Meaning the outside shrank faster than the inside?
Exactly. The skeletal architecture was rapidly miniaturized, but the soft tissues, ligaments, and energetic drives didn't always scale down proportionally.
Which perfectly explains the joint issues. Because we know toy breeds are notorious for luxating patellas, right? Where the kneecap basically just slips out of place.
Right. And the biomechanics behind that are fascinating.
How does it work?
Well, in a miniaturized skeleton, the trochlear groove, which is the little channel at the end of the femur where the kneecap is supposed to slide up and down, it often develops too shallowly.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so because the groove isn't deep enough to hold the bone securely in place during movement, the patella slips out, causing the dog to suddenly lift its leg and sort of skip.
Oh, wow. And if you compound a compromised skeletal structure with their working dog metabolism, you run into serious weight issues, too.
Massive weight issues.
Because people look at a 5-pound dog and just assume it can be carried to the mailbox for its daily exercise.
Which is terrible for them. A sedentary lifestyle is catastrophic. They still have the neurological need to explore, sniff, and engage with the environment.
Right.
And they require daily walks to burn off that caloric energy.
Mm.
Because if you let a Pomeranian become overweight, the math is just brutal.
What do you mean?
Well, adding a single pound of fat to a 5-pound frame, that is a 20% increase in overall body mass.
Oh, wow. Yeah, when you put it like that.
Right. That is an immense, unnatural, load-bearing pressure being forced onto joints that are already struggling with shallow grooves and miniaturized ligaments.
That sounds so painful. And the anatomical bottlenecks, they don't stop at the knees either. Think about the jaw.
Yeah, the jaw is a major issue.
You take the genetic blueprint of a wolf's jaw and shrink it down to the size of a golf ball. The teeth don't always shrink at the exact same rate, leading to severe crowding. And that crowding creates microscopic traps for bacteria, which is why aggressive, lifelong dental care is mandatory to prevent systemic infection.
Spot on.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a similar vulnerability in the airway.
The trachea, right.
The trachea, or windpipe, is supported by small rings of cartilage. In radically miniaturized breeds, those cartilaginous rings can be incredibly fragile.
Okay.
So if an owner attaches a leash to a standard neck collar and the dog pulls or lunges at a squirrel, the collar acts as a lever. It concentrates all that kinetic energy directly onto the fragile windpipe.
Which is so dangerous, and that's why understanding the physics of the animal is so crucial. Just swapping a collar for a well-fitted harness redistributes that kinetic force across the stronger bones of the chest and shoulders, entirely bypassing the trachea.
It is a simple mechanical fix for a serious evolutionary vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And this extreme physical fragility, it also dictates how these dogs integrate into families. The researchers at the Pomeranian Health Academy are adamant about the strict supervision required around young children.
Right.
And it is vital to frame this correctly. It has nothing to do with the breed having a nasty temperament or an inherent aggression toward kids.
Right, it's pure physics.
Exactly.
A toddler and a Pomeranian are a dangerous mix because the dog has absolutely zero physical margin for error against a blunt force impact.
Zero.
If a 50-pound golden retriever gets accidentally bumped by a running child, the dog might just bump back.
Yeah, they just shake it off.
Right. But if a 5-pound Pomeranian is squeezed too hard or accidentally dropped from a height of like 3 feet or stepped on, the structural damage is catastrophic.
And the thing is, the dog subconsciously understands its own vulnerability.
It knows it's fragile.
Right.
Right.
When a highly alert, fast-moving animal feels physically cornered or mishandled by an unpredictable toddler, its survival instincts will kick in, and it will use its teeth to protect its fragile frame.
It's just defending itself.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's synthesize all of this. We have traced an incredible evolutionary journey today.
We really have.
We've gone from a heavy-duty canine surviving the freezing Arctic tundra, pulling sleds and guarding encampments, down through the coastal trading hubs of the Baltic, into the royal palaces of 19th century England, all the way to a modern apartment couch.
It completely dismantles the idea of the Pomeranian as just a fragile accessory.
It really does. What you are actually looking at is a brilliant, ancient survival story that has simply been rewritten in miniature.
Beautifully said.
The intense bravery, the booming voice, the thermodynamic coat, the entire Spitz operating system remains flawlessly intact.
Intact and running perfectly.
And why does this level of granular history matter to you, the listener, even if you don't own a Pomeranian and never plan to?
Yeah, why should they care?
Because it forces a massive shift in how you view the built environment and the creatures navigating it. When you realize that the animals and objects around us are carrying invisible, deeply wired histories, it invites a whole new level of curiosity. You stop getting frustrated by surface-level behaviors and start analyzing the evolutionary mechanics at play.
Right. The barking stops being annoyance. It becomes an ancient sentinel fulfilling its duty.
Exactly.
Which leaves us with a truly compelling question to consider.
Oh, what is that?
Well, if a dog's psychological hardwiring can survive centuries of radical physical manipulation and completely outlast its original environmental purpose,
yeah,
what other behaviors in our modern lives, in our other domestic animals, or perhaps even in ourselves, are just ancient survival scripts running blindly in repackaged modern bodies?
Wow. Think about that the next time you see a tiny, fluffy dog asleep on a couch. The shoe scuffs the hallway outside, the dog erupts. It isn't a toy malfunctioning. It is a dire wolf standing its ground.